NBA's biggest lie? Fans are finally starting to fight back. One NBA fan spent nearly 3 months saving money just to watch LeBron James play live for the very first time. Flights booked, hotel paid, jersey bought, his kids could barely sleep the night before. But just hours before tip-off, the news dropped like a bomb across social media. Outload management. And just like that, the dream was over. That moment right there is exactly why the NBA is facing one of the most explosive debates in modern basketball history. Because fans are starting to ask a brutal question nobody inside the league wants to answer honestly anymore. Have NBA superstars stopped playing for the fans and started playing only for April? For years, basketball was built on warriors. Guys like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant treated every single game like it mattered. Sick? Play. Tired? Play. Back-to-back road trip? Still play. Because they understood something, today's NBA sometimes seems to forget fans are paying to SEE the stars. That's why when LeBron recently made his stance crystal clear, the entire basketball world exploded. If I'm healthy, I'm playing. Simple. Direct. No fake excuses. No hiding behind analytics. No carefully crafted PR statement. Just a superstar publicly saying what millions of frustrated NBA fans have been thinking for years. But not everybody agrees. Some executives around the league believe load management is the smartest thing to ever happen to basketball. Their argument? Protect the stars now so they survive the playoffs later. Win championships first. Worry about entertainment second. Sounds smart on paper, until you realize families are paying thousands of dollars to attend games where the biggest names suddenly disappear hours before tip-off, and that's where this story becomes bigger than basketball. Because this isn't just about rest anymore. This is about respect. Respect for the game. Respect for competition. Respect for the people sitting in those expensive arena seats hoping to witness greatness in person. And as this controversy keeps growing, the NBA may be heading toward a collision nobody can stop. Old school mentality versus modern sports science. Business versus passion. Championships versus loyalty to the fans. And right in the center of the storm, LeBron James. So before we continue, I want to hear from you. Do you support load management in today's NBA? Press 1 if you think players should play whenever they're healthy. Press 2 if you think resting stars for the playoffs is the right move. And most importantly, where are you watching from today? If you love real NBA stories, drama, and behind-the-scenes basketball culture, make sure you subscribe right now because this story only gets crazier from here. LeBron James just said what the entire NBA was afraid to admit. The moment LeBron James said, "If I'm healthy, I'm playing," the basketball world immediately split into two sides. One side called him the last true superstar carrying the old school mentality. The other side thought he was being unrealistic in today's NBA. But what made LeBron's statement hit so hard wasn't just the words themselves, it was WHO the words were coming from. This is not some rookie trying to prove himself. This is not a bench player chasing attention. This is a man entering deep into one of the longest and most demanding careers in basketball history. A player with more mileage on his body than almost anyone the league has ever seen. Finals runs, Olympic Games, deep playoff battles year after year. Millions of minutes under the brightest lights imaginable, and yet somehow LeBron still believes showing up matters. That's why fans instantly connected with his message. Because deep down, NBA fans don't expect perfection. They understand injuries happen. They understand bodies break down. Nobody is asking players to destroy their careers. What frustrates people is something very different. It's seeing healthy superstars sit out games that fans spent months waiting to see. And LeBron knows exactly how much that matters. For over 2 decades, he has carried the pressure of being the face of the NBA. Every arena he enters sells out. Every road game feels like an event. Every kid wearing number 23 may only get one chance in their entire life to watch him play in person. LeBron understands that responsibility better than most players ever will. That's why his comments weren't just basketball comments. They were personal. In many ways, it felt like LeBron was quietly calling out the culture the NBA has created around modern player rest. A culture where missing games has slowly become normalized. A culture where protecting the future sometimes matters more than competing in the present. And here's where things get uncomfortable for the league. Because once fans start believing regular season games no longer matter, the entire NBA business model becomes dangerous. Why buy expensive tickets early? Why tune into nationally televised games? Why travel across the country to watch stars who may suddenly disappear hours before tip-off? That fear is becoming very real, especially when older fans begin comparing today's players to legends like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, players who built their reputations on always competing no matter how exhausted they felt. And whether fair or unfair, modern NBA stars are now being judged against that standard every single night. But the truth is, this debate is about to get even more intense. Because some people inside basketball believe load management is not ruining the NBA at all, they believe it's saving it. The NBA owners quietly started choosing championships over fans. While millions of fans were praising LeBron James for defending the old school mentality, another powerful voice inside the NBA was sending a completely different message. And honestly, it shocked a lot of people because billionaire owners and front offices around the league were beginning to openly support load management. Not secretly, not behind closed doors, publicly, their argument sounded cold, but brutally logical. What's worse, missing one regular season game or losing your superstar in the playoffs? From a business perspective, the answer was obvious. Championships create dynasties. Championships increase franchise value. Championships sell merchandise forever. A random Tuesday night game in November? That's temporary. And that mindset completely changed modern basketball. Suddenly, players were no longer treated like competitors first. They became investments, multi-million-dollar assets that needed protection. That's why many executives started believing resting stars was actually the intelligent move. Why risk wear and tear in January if your real goal is surviving June? On paper, it made perfect sense. But emotionally, fans hated it because the NBA wasn't built only on winning titles. It was built on unforgettable moments, iconic performances, superstars walking into hostile arenas and still putting on a show. That emotional connection is what made basketball global. And little by little, fans started feeling that connection disappearing, especially when they watched healthy players wearing designer clothes on the bench while entire arenas sat there disappointed. Even worse, social media made the backlash explode faster than ever before. The second a superstar was ruled out for rest, timelines turned toxic. Jordan would never do this. Kobe would have played. This generation is soft. Those comments became unavoidable. And that's where the pressure on today's players became dangerous. Because modern athletes are dealing with something older generations never faced: nonstop exposure. Every decision becomes a national debate within minutes. Every missed game becomes a trending topic. Every injury update becomes fuel for sports media chaos. Still, critics refuse to back down. Many former players argue the NBA schedule has always been difficult. Back-to-backs existed before. Long flights existed before. Physical basketball existed before. So in their minds, if legends from older eras found ways to compete through exhaustion, why couldn't today's superstars? That question kept getting louder. And then the comparison started becoming personal. Because once people brought up Kobe Bryant, everything changed. Kobe Bryant changed the entire argument overnight. The moment Kobe Bryant entered the conversation, the entire debate around load management stopped feeling like a simple sports discussion. It became something much heavier, something almost emotional. Because unlike most modern arguments about rest, analytics, and long-term planning, Kobe represented a completely different mindset, one built on pain, obsession, and refusing to leave the floor unless you physically couldn't stand anymore. And that's exactly why his name keeps coming up every time the NBA talks about rest days. Fans don't just remember Kobe for championships. They remember him playing through injuries that most players today would automatically sit out for. They remember him refusing excuses. They remember him walking onto the court with everything stacked against him and still competing like every possession was life or death. So when people compare today's load management culture to Kobe's era, the criticism becomes personal. It's no longer just strategy. It becomes identity. Was basketball once about pride and endurance and now about preservation and caution? That question is what splits generations of fans right down the middle. Supporters of load management argue the game has evolved. The pace is faster. The travel is heavier. The medical understanding of injuries is far more advanced. They believe protecting players is not weakness, it's intelligence. But critics hear something different. They hear excuses, and that's where the tension explodes. Because for every argument about science and recovery, there is always a counterexample from the past. A player who played through fatigue, pain, and pressure, because the jersey on his back meant something more than just numbers and contract. That's why every time a superstar sits out a nationally televised game, the comparison comes back instantly. Would Kobe sit out this game? It's a question that doesn't need an official answer because in the minds of fans, the answer is already written. And this is where the league finds itself in a difficult position. On one side, teams are trying to protect billion-dollar investments and extend careers. On the other side, fans are demanding authenticity, effort, and presence, not explanations. Even legends like Michael Jordan are constantly brought into the debate as symbols of an era where availability was part of greatness itself. And while the NBA today insists that modern load management is about longevity and championships, the emotional truth is harder to control. Fans don't feel like they're watching the same game anymore, and that feeling is starting to spread fast. Because the deeper this debate goes, the more one uncomfortable reality begins to surface. What if the NBA didn't just change how players rest, but changed what fans expect from stars entirely? The NBA is no longer Jordan's league, and that changes everything. Every generation of basketball fans eventually hits the same wall, the comparison wall. And in today's NBA, that wall always leads back to Michael Jordan. Not because fans are stuck in the past, but because Jordan represents a standard that feels almost impossible to replicate in the modern era. He played through exhaustion. He played through pressure. He played through injuries that would have ended most players' night before tip-off. And most importantly, he never treated the regular season like something optional. That's why whenever the load management debate explodes, Jordan's shadow appears instant. But here's the uncomfortable truth the modern NBA is dealing with. The league today is not built like Jordan's era anymore. The schedule is different. The medical approach is different. The financial stakes are completely different. And the expectations placed on superstar athletes are heavier than ever. Teams now invest hundreds of millions into a single player's long-term health. A franchise isn't just thinking about tonight's game. They're thinking about 3 years from now, 5 years from now, even the player's post-career longevity. So from a front office perspective, protecting stars becomes a strategy, not a suggestion. But fans don't think like front offices. Fans think like moments. They remember the ticket they bought. They remember the night they cleared their schedule. They remember the feeling of waiting all day just to see a superstar walk out of the tunnel. And when that moment gets taken away, no medical report or long-term plan can replace it. That emotional gap is where the conflict grows. Because even if load management helps teams win more championships in theory, it also risks something far more fragile: trust. Once fans start believing that stars might not show up, every game becomes uncertain. Every ticket purchase becomes a gamble. Every nationally televised matchup loses some of its magic. And that's where players like LeBron James become central again. Because LeBron isn't just another superstar in this debate. He's the bridge between two eras. He understands the old mentality of always playing, but he also understands the modern reality of physical preservation. And that dual identity is exactly why his voice carries so much weight. Still, even LeBron's perspective can't fully resolve the deeper tension inside the league. Because the real question isn't just about one player resting or playing. It's about what the NBA is becoming. Is it still a league defined by availability and nightly competition? Or is it now a long-term chess match where some nights simply don't matter anymore? And as this debate continues to grow, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The NBA isn't just fighting over load management, it's fighting over its identity. The hidden truth about the NBA schedule no one wants to talk about. Behind all the heated arguments around LeBron James, behind the emotional comparisons to legends like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, there is one uncomfortable reality that rarely gets addressed. Honestly, the NBA season is brutal. Not in a dramatic highlight reel way, but in a slow, grinding, physical, and mental way that builds up over time. 82 games, constant travel, back-to-back nights in different cities, media pressure, practice demands, high-intensity playoff expectations, waiting at the end of the road. It's not just basketball, it's survival. And that's exactly why teams started rethinking how they use their star. Because modern sports science revealed something earlier generations never fully had access to. The human body has limits that don't always show up immediately. Fatigue doesn't always look like injury. Wear and tear doesn't always hurt to death. But it can show up in April, or worse, in the playoffs. So front offices started asking a different question, not can he play tonight, but should he play tonight? That shift changed everything. Because once should enters the conversation, basketball stops being purely emotional and becomes strategic. And that's where load management was born. But the problem is, strategy doesn't always match perception. To a team, resting a star in November might be protecting a championship run in June. To a fan, it feels like betrayal, especially when that fan may only attend one game all season. That disconnect is at the heart of the entire NBA debate, and it becomes even more complicated when you look at players like LeBron. Because LeBron is not just managing a normal career arc. He is managing something unprecedented, extreme longevity at an elite level. Every minute he plays adds to a body of work that already spans decades of deep playoff runs, Olympic tournaments, and high-pressure seasons where he was the entire system. So when analysts talk about reducing his minutes or spacing out his games, it's not random, it's calculated preservation. But even that logic has limits. Because rhythm matters, chemistry matters, timing matters. A team that is fully healthy but disconnected is not always better than a team that is slightly tired but fully in sync. And that's where another voice in this debate becomes important: the fan experience. Fans don't see long-term models or injury projections. They see a schedule, they see a ticket, they see a promise. And when that promise gets broken, even for strategic reasons, the emotional impact is immediate. That's why this issue refuses to disappear. because every side of the argument is partially right and partially wrong at the same time. And as the season moves closer to the most important stretch, the pressure only increases. Not just on the players, but on the entire identity of the league itself. LeBron James, the face of a new NBA problem. There are players who define eras, and then there is LeBron James, a player who has defined multiple eras at once. But the longer his career continues, the more complicated his role in the load management debate becomes. Because LeBron is no longer just a superstar. He is an institution. Every statistic about longevity, every discussion about minutes played, every debate about rest, inevitably circles back to him. Not because he is doing something wrong, but because he is doing something unprecedented. He has played more high-pressure basketball than almost anyone in history. Deep playoff runs year after year, finals appearances that stretched across different teams, different coaches, different systems. A career where the offseason is often shorter than the season itself. So when people talk about protecting LeBron, they are not talking about a typical athlete. They are talking about a human body that has been pushed through more elite competition than most players will ever experience in their entire lives combined. That's where the argument becomes complicated. Because on one hand, fans want to see him play. Every game feels like part of history now. Every point adds to records that may never be broken. Every appearance is an event. On the other hand, the Lakers are not just thinking about entertainment. They are thinking about survival. How do you keep a 17-plus year veteran effective deep into the season? How do you ensure he is not just available, but dangerous when the playoffs arrive? How do you balance legacy milestones with championship urgency? These questions don't have easy answers. That's why load management exists in the first place. But for LeBron, the issue isn't just physical, it's rhythm. He is the engine of every offense he plays in. When he is on the floor, the entire structure of the team changes. Spacing, tempo, decision-making, confidence. Remove that for even a few games, and the system has to be rebuilt. And in a tight Western Conference, rebuilding rhythm is a risk teams don't always want to take. Still, the alternative carries risk too, because pushing a veteran body too hard late in the season can lead to burnout at the worst possible time, the playoffs, when every possession matters more than the entire regular season combined. That's why LeBron sits at the center of this storm. Not because he started it, but because he represents every side of it at once. He represents durability and fatigue. He represents entertainment and strategy. He represents the past of the NBA and its future. And the longer this debate continues, the more one uncomfortable truth becomes obvious. There is no perfect way to manage a superstar like LeBron in today's NBA. Only trade-off. And every decision to play or to rest comes with consequences that fans, coaches, and players all feel differently. But the season doesn't pause for that debate. It keeps moving forward, and so does the pressure. When the NBA stops feeling guaranteed, at this point, the debate around LeBron James is no longer just about load management. It's about trust in the entire league. Fans don't think in terms of long-term injury prevention or analytics models. They think in moments. They buy tickets expecting to see stars play, and when those stars sit out, that emotional promise breaks. That's why frustration keeps growing. Not because rest is always wrong, but because it feels unpredictable. Comparisons to legends like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant make the issue even sharper, because those eras felt consistent. If they were healthy, they played. Today's NBA, meanwhile, is built on optimization, managing minutes, protecting future performance, and balancing long-term goals. It makes sense strategically, but it weakens the emotional certainty fans used to rely on. So the league ends up stuck between two truths: protect the future or guarantee the present. And as that gap grows, the NBA product starts to feel less predictable, and fans are starting to notice it more than ever. The breaking point when the NBA divides into two worlds. At this point, the debate around LeBron James has stopped being just a conversation about rest. It has become a full-blown identity crisis for the NBA. One side of the argument says everything must revolve around winning a championship. If resting a star increases the chance of success in the playoffs, then it's justified. The regular season becomes a long-term investment, not a nightly obligation. The other side sees something very different. Fans feel like the league is slowly breaking its promise. They buy tickets expecting to see the biggest stars, but more and more often, those stars are not on the court. That creates frustration, disappointment, and a sense that the experience is no longer guaranteed. This is why every load management decision turns into a controversy. It's no longer just strategy, it feels personal to fans who may only get one chance all season to see their favorite players live. That's also why comparisons to legends like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant keep coming back. Those eras are remembered for consistency. If the stars were healthy, they played. No questions, no uncertainty, Modern basketball, however, is built on a different foundation. Data, load tracking, medical optimization, and long-term planning all play a major role. Teams are trying to protect their biggest assets for the moments that matter most in June. But the problem is simple. While the logic makes sense, the emotion doesn't always follow. Fans don't experience optimization. They experience absence. And as that gap continues to grow, the NBA finds itself stuck between two competing truths. Win smarter or be present every night. And neither side is willing to fully give in the final truth: basketball, business, and what fans really want. At the center of everything, LeBron James represents more than just a superstar debate. He represents the entire evolution of the NBA itself. A league that used to be defined by availability, toughness, and nightly competition is now defined by strategy, preservation, and long-term planning. And somewhere in that transition, something emotional got lost in translation. Because when fans talk about the NBA, they are not talking about spreadsheets. They are talking about moments. The feeling of walking into an arena and knowing they might witness something unforgettable. The hope that tonight could be the night history happened. That's why this entire load management debate hits so hard. Supporters of modern rest culture argue that protecting players is necessary. Careers are longer, the game is faster, and the stakes are higher than ever. From their perspective, avoiding unnecessary wear in November is how you survive in June. But critics see something else. They see a product that is becoming less predictable, less consistent, and less emotionally reliable. They see fans paying more and getting less certainty in return. And that's where the comparison to legends like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant becomes unavoidable again. Not because the past was perfect, but because it felt simple. If the star was healthy, he played. The contract between player and fan felt direct. Today, that contract is more complicated. Teams are not just thinking about one game anymore. They are thinking about championships, salary cap windows, player longevity, and organizational timelines that stretch years into the future. Everything is optimized, but basketball has always been more than optimization. It has been emotion, it has been reliability, it has been the belief that what you paid for is what you will see. So the NBA is left standing at a crossroads with no easy answer. Protect the players or protect the experience? Win the long game or honor the present one? And the uncomfortable truth is this: no matter which degree, someone will feel like something important was lost. Because in modern basketball, every solution comes with a cost. But if there is one thing that remains clear through all the debate, it's this: fans don't just want a better product, they want a real one. And that is the challenge the NBA will keep fighting long after this conversation ends.